Let me start the record. Yeah.
Fourth civilization, lesser
Recording,
civilization.
sir. Yeah.
Fourth civilization. During the time when there was an earth age, when the earth element was dominant and the people were adjusted to it. There were great civilizations surpassing in achievements anything reported in history. So that was that good. These civilizations were based on agriculture and the working of stone and metal. Starting with the use of animals for power, the civilization advanced to the use of complicated machines. The people operated by the force of nature.
Okay.
So that means animals for power means like using buffalo, I mean like cows for the plowing. Is this that's what he meant?
No. Starting with the use of animals for power. There were so many animals that they have used.
Yeah, like horses and cows, I mean like, yeah.
Horses, cows, elephants, camels.
Yeah.
You have so many.
Yes. There is but one force. It is turned into many channels and appears under many aspects. Today, it manifests as light, heat, gravity, cohesion, electricity, and otherwise.
Correct.
Untold, untold years ago, the same force manifested differently. The solid, fluid, airy, and radiant matter of the earth is being continually decomposed and recomposed. The resulting matter, which today takes the form of minerals, coal, or oil, was different in different ages.
Okay. While that was different, what is this one force?
Intelligence force, like
Energy.
one force,
One
the
force is energy. The
energy,
universal
four
energy is that
combination of
force.
four elements.
Correct. Yeah.
So, number of years ago, it manifested differently. Solid, fluid, airy, and radiant matter of the earth is being continually decomposed and recomposed. Yeah, and now it is taking the form of minerals, coal or oil was different in different ages. A circulation of the same four elements and the four states of matter on the physical plane is kept up continuously by means of the manifestation of this earth force.
Hmm. So it is the energy.
Yeah, is kept up continuously by means of, yeah. In the past, this force was liberated not so much by means of wood, coal, or oil as it is today, but by tapping the earth currents in which it manifested.
Hmm.
The
Okay.
ability of the ability of the fundamental earth force to manifest at different times in varying ways results in the different directions of the poles of the earth crust, and in connection with these changes in the cycle of four ages of earth, water, air, and fire. So the ability of the fundamental earth force to manifest at different times in varying ways results in the different directions of the poles of the earth crust, and in connection with these changes in the cycles of four ages of earth, water, air, and fire.
Hmm.
The kind of manifestation of the force depends on the class of units, earth, water, air, and fire units, with which the humans can make contact directly through their involuntary nervous system or indirectly through exterior objects as wood, coal, oil, copper, or radium, and the like.
Hmm.
So basically, yeah. So we are contacting either directly through the nervous system connection or indirectly, indirectly through nervous system or
That is
directly.
one way to interpret it. There is another way that this can be interpreted. One is
Mm,
involuntary, that means in the nature form, as elements as well as elementals,
mm,
or
yeah.
as the physical entities, which again is a combination of these entities as fire, wood, and all that. coal, oil, paper. So it is both in the physical and non-physical form that you will be able to see the manifestation happen. Yeah.
Sir, I would like to add a little bit to that.
Yeah.
See, the Earth has got gravitational field as well as magnetic field, and the poles of Earth do shift. Probably that's what it meant, saying that
No, no.
results
See,
in different directions of the poles of the Earth crust.
no, not that, not that. See, all these, when it is energy, it is as particle as well as a waveform. Okay. Now, magnetism and electricity is a manifestation of the charge when it has become a matter. Because when it becomes a matter, it is matter as well as antimatter.
No, but Earth itself is a matter already.
Correct.
He's
So
talking
it has
of
got
poles of the Earth.
particles. No, it has got particles which are already charged. It is either positive charge or negative charge. When it is electron or it is positron.
That's at the
Positron is the
energy level.
antimatter of matter.
Yeah,
Positron is the structure of the units within the antimatter, not the matter. So both of them come to play, and those charges are giving them the qualities of impulses or electricity and magnetism. That is how that is getting converted. So when you break that down further, it again becomes either elements or elementals.
yeah.
Correct?
Yeah,
That is the way
yeah.
I interpret this sentence, because it is both. It is both as earth particles also. Now, earth particles, when they are held together, you will say there is magnetic charge or electrical charge in there.
Yeah, you are right as far the particles are concerned, but I was thinking as a solid Earth as a whole. Solid Earth as a whole has got North Pole and South Pole, and they drift. As they drift, the magnetic field drifts, and also it affects the nervous system of the individuals, as well as physically you can measure the change or how
Then,
many degrees it has deviated and all
yeah,
that scientifically.
I agree with what you are saying. But
Yeah,
here, what he is saying is already in a simplified sentence, he has included all of those. He has
yeah.
already included those things in the same.
Right, involuntary nervous system and also
And the voluntary
exterior
also.
objects.
Correct.
Yeah, both. Yeah. So that's what I was
I
thinking about.
agree. I agree. At the height of the earth,
At the height of the earth ages, at the height of the earth ages, the currents
no,
running
no, no,
through
no.
the
At
earth.
the height of the earth ages, the currents
Sorry.
running through the earth at certain
height of the
places.
earth. Okay. That means as it progresses, at the height of the earth ages, as it progresses the earth, the currents running through the earth at certain places were let out and were connected with machines for mechanical operation. As the time passed by, see, he's now, he's
Correct.
the way of,
Basically, that is what it means.
yeah. As time passed by, the currents running through the earth at certain places were let out and were connected with machines for mechanical operation, more industrial.
Correct.
Broad
Broad and
permanent
permanent roads. Yeah.
built over and through mountains and across plains. The people did not use the water for travel and transportations. Some of these roads into the interior of the earth remain today. The people did not use an air force but lifted great weights of stone by their machines.
So in some
It was
places they used the nature forces, some places they did not.
That's what even in Egypt pyramid they say the people did
Right.
not use air force but lifted the gates of stones by their machines.
Correct.
They could they could so focus the earth force that it would produce heat or light at any place where it was intercepted or an outlet made through a receiving machine.
Correct.
What is this? They could focus the earth force
No,
that it would produce.
see, basically what he's saying is you would use the force against itself to change the form or bring about a transformation.
Yeah, the electricity, yeah, the form of, yeah, to make a machine, yeah. This force could be used to make hard metals workable without heat. The people had processes to make soft metals hard. They had machines for cutting and polishing stone, for melting, churning, and setting it solid, for spinning and weaving plant fibers, and
The hairs of animals.
of animals. So that is how, like to protect the winter,
No,
they
this
were
is
making.
this is the various ways in which they were using what is available.
As the civilization is progressing, yeah, they had material which was not woven but was solid like leather and could be made proof against the cuts of weapons.
Mm.
They traveled not on wheels but in closed vehicles which slid easily along the roads.
Mm.
These sleds were of metal and sometimes of a composition which was transparent. Oh, the material was so hardened that it was scarcely affected by friction, even though the vehicles were moved along with great speed by the earth force.
Mm.
So these vehicles were transparent and they were sleds. Sled. The greatest speed, which was of many hundred miles an hour, was developed when the cars traveled underground. Oh, distance was practically eliminated. This travel went along beneath the outer crust of the earth, but the travelers gained no knowledge of the interior earth, its worlds, its interior earth, its worlds and its beings. So they did not gain any knowledge of the interior earth, worlds and its beings any more than humans now know the beings living in what is called the air. So he's saying there is another world underneath which humans doesn't know.
I mean, a human is not able to recognize it.
The whole earth was not inhabited by people that had reached this stage. On some parts were people who were less advanced, and in other parts, savages. The whole earth was not inhabited by people that had reached this stage. Okay. On some parts, who were people who were less advanced, and in others, they were savages. They had their sports, which were feats of endurance, ball games, wrestling, and friendly combats. The ball games were of great variety. Running was not so much a feature catching and intercepting the ball. Okay, the ball game. They could throw a ball so that it would make a circle on the ground, and the game was to intercept it. The water and the air were foreign and unfamiliar to them in their sports and in their work. Uh-huh. Learning was concerned with agriculture, metalworking, stone making, architecture, earth currents, and their operation. The languages spoken differed from those of today in sound and connotation. There were extended systems of literature. The chief means of recording was by engraving or stamping signs in color on thin metal plate. There was a white metal which would not tarnish but would absorb and retain indelible dyes. Sheets of thin metal were rolled, or books were made by fastening the plates on hinges. These sheets were made as thin and flexible as paper is today. They also had a composition made of plant which retained an impression of writing. This material was insoluble and not inflammable after it had been treated. There were many such civilizations in each earth age. They started from rude beginnings and sometimes attained by slow stages to astonishing heights. At other times, they bloomed suddenly because of information which wise men imparted. An earth
No,
age
no,
was
no.
succeeded by
Here, interestingly, what are the lower civilizations? Earth age, water age, air age, and so on.
age.
Yeah.
So
Now
now we are
he's taking
probably
us to was succeeded by the water age.
so an earth age was succeeded by a water age. While
Yeah.
some people were in earth age, others had entered upon a water age. They became conscious of the units of the watery layer, got in touch with them, and learned to use them. Sometimes this came about by the beginning of another period after the earth civilization had been swept away, sometimes by gradual adaptation of people to new surroundings when there was a slow subsiding of the land. So from the
This is where one of these transitions only, in some other book I was reading, he talks about we used to breathe oxygen, and we used to breathe carbon dioxide and exhale oxygen at one point in time.
like plants.
Correct. And the environment became so saturated with oxygen that carbon dioxide was not available. So the organisms that makes us today slowly adapted to the changing circumstance and survived breathing in oxygen and leaving out carbon dioxide.
So it's just a matter of adaptation.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
this explains that.
And also, see, in this water age, I think they were living in boat houses, something like. Most frequently, the water age developed out of the earth age, and people existed at the same time in both.
Yeah,
The
that means
bodies of the
there were people who were living in water as well as in this one. Yeah.
people, the bodies of the people of water age were more supple and quicker than those of an earth age. In general, the conformation, the human form has remained the same throughout the fourth civilization. There were great lakes with well-populated floating islands. The people built houses by growing plants and vines together, solidified the walls with a clay, and decorated them artistically. The houses were not higher than 3 stories. The people grew fruits and flowers from the vines that were part of the houses. This is all in the water.
Yeah, this is in the water.
They built boats for the accommodation of one person, which fitted their bodies and in which they could travel underwater. Oh, they built boats for the accommodation of one person. Okay. And other boats were large enough to hold several hundred. Okay, so basically one of them was only for one person, others were 100 for 100 people, more than 100. Air was drawn from the water by an appliance in the boat. Such boats were built of pliable wood or of fish bones and cemented by plant juices so that the boats had flexibility. Oh my God. So that was the plant juices was the cement. The
Hmm.
ocean was at such times not divided as now.
No. You're missing this.
Oh, some of the people learned to run the boats not by machinery or the force of the wind, but by a certain feeling within their bodies, which they imparted to the rudder of the boat. So that feeling, that mental feeling,
Yeah.
this feeling is generated from the abdominal and pelvic cavities and driven forward. Then the navigator held his hands to the tiller and so connected with a current in the water, which was thereby utilized to propel the boat. Oh my
No,
God.
this is
So,
interesting. Abdomen and pelvic. If I take the chakras here and try to read, it is the abdomen is your Swadhisthana and the pelvic is
abdomen,
your Manipuraka.
pelvic is the pelvic is the Swadhisthana,
No.
and abdominal is Manipura.
Abdomen,
Abdomen
yeah,
is the
yeah, yeah,
outward.
you're right. Yeah, I mistook the order. Yes.
So
Interesting.
from there, the force was coming and pushing forward. The ocean was at such times not
Here,
divided as
this is
now.
interesting. Then the navigator held his hands to the tiller and so connected with a current in the water, which was
Even
thereby
even
utilized to propel the boat.
Even now, they use the boats to propel like that.
Yeah.
Small boats, they do. The ocean was at such times not divided as now. The huge lakes were connected by underground streams and divided by mountain chains. Wow. See, the huge lakes were connected by underground streams and divided by mountain chains. Boats could
Now,
travel
Nene,
under.
just go back to our Mahabharata and
Mm,
visualize the Akhanda Bharat or Hindustan of those days, right?
yeah,
All
yeah.
those, with the disturbance in the sea, they became separated entities.
Mm, correct.
Correct.
The
Now
division of.
we are talking about that phenomena which could potentially come with portion of Africa coming and hitting Mumbai and Gujarat,
Yeah,
which may result in mountains higher than Mount Everest in the next 50, 60 years, and temperatures
separating.
falling by minus 40 degrees Celsius, which is huge.
Yeah, my God.
You can read
So,
all this. They are not divided by mountain chains.
yeah, the ocean was at such times not divided as now. The huge lakes were connected by underground streams and divided by mountain chains. Boats could travel underwater from lake to lake, underwater. The
Mm,
people could stay in water, warm or cold, for a long time. See, this is amazing. The people could stay in the water, warm or cold, for a long time. An oil or an insulating suit was used when the water was too cold.
mm,
They did not have to swim with their limbs, but could use their feeling to connect with the water current. Oh,
mm.
that just was the feeling.
Correct.
Over their heads, they fitted hoods that allowed them to breathe. Fish, fish would not attack them. They could swim as fast as the fish for a distance and kill them by the use of water force. Amazing. They did not work metals well. If there was no contemporaneous earth age in bloom, they used bones and the sharpened shells and the scales of fish, some of which were like flint. With such tools, they hewed wood and tilled the soil on their small islands. They wove fibers into cloth and made a fine linen from water plants. They decorated their clothes with many colors, from the juices of wines and berries, and with fish scales and gems. Wow. Their foods were fish, marine plants, and savory fruits, which they got from the bottoms and sides of the lakes.
Mm.
They are
They ate
they
them.
ate them cooked, getting heat from a device which was worked by a water force. That's amazing. From water force, they were getting the heat. They knew how to make fire, but did not use it extensively, as they obtained in other ways the heat and power they needed. Only they used whatever they wanted. They knew
Exactly.
how to, but did not use it extensively, as they obtained in other ways the heat and power they needed. They did all these things as did the people of the earth age, but they were conscious of something which the earth people could not touch or use. So they are more conscious.
Mm,
They were conscious of the water layer which was in the solid earth and were conscious of living in it when they were in the streams and lakes. They used forces which were within the water layer to accomplish their ends with the matter in the solid state.
Now, here, just take the concept here.
Mm,
What is that concept telling us interestingly? Right? You are in a particular environment. the environment changes, and you have the wherewithal and ability to adapt and change to that environment such that you
Right.
are able to coexist in two environments, and that is progression. That
Yes.
is
And also,
civilization.
that's why they were saying they could swim faster than fish, but fish were not attacking them.
Yeah.
So they were adapted to that sea creatures also. Yeah.
And just by the currents, they were able to kill the fish.
Yeah. Water current. Yes.
Amazing.
Correct. They lived in small communities or in cities, some of which were built on the water. See, there were cities on the water. The buildings were on boats and connected with each other. There was a lively commerce between different people. They followed widely different trades. The savages were usually on the mainland and afraid of the water. These water people had sports and physical exercises all connected with water. Among their games was one in which
And in
the
which the
contestants
contestants rode certain fish.
rode certain fish which raced and leaped over with each other. Like sea creatures, even nowadays, they go.
Yeah.
They had arts and sciences, a melodious music, a peculiar aquatic architecture, and their almost indestructible boats. Their language consisted chiefly of vowel sounds. They had literature and records on cloth spun of the fibers of water plants. These civilizations of the water ages saw a high development of humanity.
Mm.
Bodies of great endurance, nobility of feature, skill in their arts, and great intellectual attainments distinguished the people of some of these water races.
Mm.
An age succeeded the water age when people became conscious of and adjusted their bodies to the air units which moved through the layer of air. Such ages usually began with the discovery by individuals of the force of lightness and the force of flight in themselves. These forces always exist, but they cannot at present be used by humans. The
Mm.
force of lightness is a distinct force as much so as heat. It is one of the manifestations of the fundamental earth force. Its manifestation removes weight to a greater or lesser degree. That's what levitation.
Now, one is levitation. Now, what is this telling us? You're starting with earth age, you're gone to water age, you're going to fire age.
Yes.
Right. Now, what is the relationship between earth, water, air? It is the density of the items and the composition of the Panchamahabhutas.
And also they become
And,
subtler. They
and
Exactly.
grow.
also related to the chakras also. When you
Yeah,
start
yeah.
from the Muladhara chakra.
Right. No, chakra
Yes.
was our interpretation that we were trying to bring so that we understand and we correlate. But basically, what is it talking about? You are going
No,
through.
but sir, if you look at exactly that's
Huh,
what I'm saying. When you look at it, the subtler forms, I mean, what I'm trying to interpret, you
hmm,
start from the Muladhara chakra and then you go to the crown chakra and further. So every chakra, when you go up, it becomes more. It makes the complete scenario more
true.
subtler.
No dispute. No dispute. Then I am bringing in one more. This one. Close your eyes and just imagine. Earth is mineral kingdom. Combination of earth with all the other elements changed is the plant kingdom. Right? It came starting with the water and all that we are seeing utilization of what that environment is providing to the person who is living in that environment. Right? So there is more to it than just that part of the transformation. Not the physical, also look at it from the subtler point of what we are seeing. Probably this
Yeah.
will ultimately come with Now air element is your heart, anahata.
Correct.
Right, let's go further. This is interesting. The way the evolution.
Yes, such ages usually began with the discovery by individuals of the force of lightness and the force of light in themselves. These forces always exist, but they cannot at present be used by humans. The force of lightness is a distinct force, as much so as heat. It is one of the manifestations of the fundamental earth forces. Its manifestation removes weight to a greater or lesser degree. If to a lesser degree than gravitation, it reduces the weight. If to a greater degree, it causes the object in which it manifests to depart from surrounding objects. By rising into the air is meant only going away from the earth crust. Rising when an object is moved by lightness can be done into the air inside the earth as well as into the air outside the earth. Lightness affects the feeling as ecstasy without producing foolishness. It produces ecstasy without foolish. It is brought into play by a mental attitude that puts one in touch with the air units on their active side, which is the air force, and by breathing, which liberates the force and draws it through the nerves of the involuntary nervous system. Let me read this. It is brought into play by mental attitude that puts one in touch with the air units on their
What is
active
it? See, by raising the air with them, by raising into the air is meant only going away from the earth crust. What is going away? Rising when an object is moved by lightness can be done into the air inside the earth as well as into the air outside the earth. That means that direction, depending upon the force of gravity, will change the direction. If it is lighter than the 9, what is that? Force of gravity, Anup, per meter square or something like that. We studied in school, right? 9.
So, units of gravity, sir. Is that what you are asking?
Yeah.
9.8. 9.8 meter per second square.
Yeah, newtons per.
Yeah, it depends upon the density of the material. That's what he is talking.
Correct.
Lightning,
See,
reverse of density.
signs of aging. Lightness affects the feeling as ecstasy without producing foolishness. Foolishness is heavy then. Ecstasy is lighter. Okay. It is brought into play. What? This movement is brought into play, right? Yes. It is the movement.
So the ecstasy, I think.
No. See, he is only saying that, but this movement, moved by lightness, right? This lightness is brought into effect,
Right.
into
Yes.
play
Lightness
by
is
a
brought
mental
into-
attitude that is put in touch with the air units on their active side, which is the air force, and by breathing, which liberates the force and draws it through the nerves of the involuntary nervous system. When the force is felt in the voluntary nervous system, it is lightness and the body rises into the air. So this is the methodology. Yeah.
Levitation. Because in meditation, when people more and more, they have this levitation experience.
Correct.
Its lightness equal to the mental attitude so that a body can rise and float like thistle down or shoot away from the earth. The force of light is a force of the layer of the air and is similar to that of lightness, but is distinct as a force. Lightness moves away from the earth crust. Flight generally moves parallel to it, but it can move on an incline up or down. The characteristic of it is the direction. It receives this by the mental set and it is induced into the body by breathing. So that is the proper breathing
And
techniques.
is he slowly trying to build how we breathe in and connect the external portion of ourselves into the internal portion?
Correct. That's what I think he's trying to do.
That
Yeah.
is where he's slowly taking us.
Proper breathing. Yes. It can be exercised without the force of lightness, but then it must be exercised continuously and at a different speed, great enough to make the aid support the body. Usually, both forces are exercised together. That means the force of lightness and
No, the mental force and the breathing, I think.
mental force and the breathing. Both forces are manifestations of the fundamental earth force, specialized by being active in the air layer.
Mm.
In an air age, that is, in a period when many people can come into contact with these forces in the layer of air, their thoughts and nerve currents touch the units of air directly instead of, as now, through the earth units. The movements of the air units being at a different rate from that of the earth units, they counteract and overcome the forces exercised by the earth units.
So this is
So,
human type of, this looks like
Hanuman,
human type of a being.
correct. So, more and more people, yeah. Ratna says she has,
Okay, ma'am.
okay.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you, Andy.
Yeah.
Thank
The people in an air age were a development from those of the water age. The forces which were used for moving swiftly through the water were adapted to the air as the forces on the earth crust had been adapted to the water. The force of lightness had been used to a moderate degree in running, jumping on land and in racing in the water. So the force of lightness had been used to a moderate degree in running and jumping on land and in racing in the water. At first, a few exercised the forces of lightness and flight. Then greater number became familiar with the use, and finally the people born were naturally adjusted to these air forces. See how the changes are coming.
No, one is changed. Now, this is also leading my thought process and taking me through what we read in Jonathan Siegel.
Yeah. That bird can do, what can't I do? When that bird can fly, why can't I fly? At the crest of an air age, the people lived in houses on the earth and in floating houses on the water, but the dominating race lived chiefly in the air. Some persons on the earth seldom took to the air and were afraid to trust themselves to it. But the people of the air age lived in dwellings or in huge buildings in the air. No, they lived in the huge buildings in the air.
Mm.
They took some of the materials for these from the earth. Other materials they precipitated or consolidated from the air itself. They removed the weight from the materials and placed them in position in the air where they were fixed and balanced so as to remain undisturbed until they were removed. The people accomplished this by focusing and attaching to the buildings the forces of lightness. There were no streets. The buildings stood on different levels in the air. Amazing. Even this is
His visualization is crazy, right?
amazing. I don't know. It's amazing. They were just as solid as anything on earth today. Timbers, stones, and metals were used, but their weights removed and kept removed by the use of a certain blue metal, either drawn from the air or mined and refined from the earth. This metal was a conductor of the force of lightness and was used to impart lightness to inorganic objects. The people obtained their food from the fruits, grains, and animals of the earth, and from fish and birds. Much of their food they drew from the air itself by breathing. Oh, much of their food they drew from the air itself by breathing. They had plants that floated in the air and drew their nourishment from it. But most plants were in gardens attached to the houses. The materials of their draperies and the garments were made from plants and from the hair of animals. Feathers were used largely. Their forms were human, but their bodies surpassed those of the earth and the water people in lightness and freshness. To use the air force was natural. Babies had to be
No,
protected, but
to
they
use
should
the air force was natural. The force of air.
that to use the air force was natural. Babies had to be protected, but they soon learned to adjust their mental set and their breathing so as to touch the forces in the air layer. They learned this more readily than children learn to walk, as readily as birds learn to fly. The people used their air forces without much effort. The people used their air forces without much effort. They walked about and worked in their houses and slept on couches without exercising the force of flight. Over long galleries, they glided above the floors and in the open relied naturally upon their command of the air. So they glided above the floors and in the open relied naturally upon the air command of the air. They rested and floated in the air as one does in water. They could control the winds and prevent or cause storms. Sometimes they had wings or sheets attached to the back to facilitate movement. They had airships for commerce and travel over long distances. They used all the products of the earth, its plants, woods, stones, and metals, but had no complicated machines. Their enormous airships their enormous airships were guided and propelled by the force of the helmsman alone. Their games consisted chiefly in variation of flying and in performances in the air. The salient features of their sports were graceful sliding or rising movements in the air, accompanied by charming sounds produced by the movements themselves and accentuated by the voice. The movement and the sounds produced light colors like those of a rainbow rather than pigment colors. The marvelous effects of these lights were enhanced when many people engaged in the harmonious of movement, sound, and color at the same time. Oh. The marvelous effects of these lights were enhanced when many people engaged in the harmonious movement, sound, and color at the same time. There were wrestling matches and dancing in the air. Their art centered around the singing and music. Among the instruments used was a sort of trumpet with diaphragms which were moved and varied by the human voice, and thereby direct sounds and echoes were created in the air, followed by colors which often took on forms. They had huge instruments shaped like the half of a hollow sphere and many feet in diameter, which produced a symphonic sound by the intercepting the units of the four states of matter in their movements and relating the movements to each other. By the power of that sound, if directed towards the earth, the people who heard it lost their fear and weight, were unraptured, and rose into the air where they remained. Wow, who heard? And remained in the air as long as they were within hearing of that sound. At times, there was a proficiency in the signs among some of the people. Their learning was concerned chiefly with the different rates of movement of the four kinds of units in nature and their many subdivisions. They knew of hundreds of different rates of movements of units and adjusted some of these by combining, binding, and eliminating certain of the units. Thereby, they evoked forces chiefly of the air layer and made them dominate the water and the earth forces. The reason they maintained their their habitations in the air was that there they could more easily reach and direct these forces. By means of such forces, they stabilized their houses, cities in the air, and obtained heat and light energy for their domestic affairs. Since only some individuals could do this, it was left to a certain group whose duty it was to attend to the supply. Waste matter was at once disposed of by decomposing it into component units or by recombining these units into other subjects. They had languages to
Other
express their
objects.
thoughts. Yeah, they used these to be recombining these units into other objects. They had languages to express their thoughts. They had sheets of a material on which communications from one to the other could pass, but these were used only as keepsakes because the people could communicate by thought only. The nerve matter of their brains contacted the currents made by thoughts in the physical world. So the nerve matter brains contact the current made by the physical world. Speech and thought coincided. If anyone told a lie, it was at once manifest because then speech and thought were seen not to coincide. Amazing. The things which they wanted to put on records as information, news, or literature, they inscribed on or sounded sounded against plates connected with the reservoir on the life plane of the physical world. So the sounded again is so that those sound plates they recorded here. The inscribing or sounding was transferred to and to made a permanent record on the matter of the reservoir. People who thereafter wanted the information so preserved could find it by going to a public building where they found registers of signed words. Amazing.
Here, is this Akashic record then? Or the makings of the Akashic record?
I don't think so. See, these were the mantras, probably, whatever they were hearing.
No, all that is fine. But they were left in that environment, he is saying, as a record.
Yeah, probably astral. See, Ashwini Devatalu, I don't know.
No, that is Akashic record, no?
Yeah,
Amazing.
probably, yes. Then they touched with an instrument the selected sign word on the reproducing plate that connected them with the permanent record of the reservoir, and so they obtained the information. Probably Akashic records.
It is Akashic record.
Then they touched with an instrument the selected sign word on the reproducing plate. Then that connected them with a permanent record of the reservoir, and so they obtained that in the information. After getting the subject and the sign word, they could go over the record at home, provided they had there a device for receiving and reproducing the records. Books and libraries did not exist. They were not needed. So this is probably Akashic records.
It is Akashic record.
Correct.
Ah.
A fire age succeeded. A fire age succeeded the air age and gradually grew out of and dominated it. The air age continued to exist contemporaneously, simultaneously. The human beings in a fire age had the same form and figure as the air people, but they differed noticeably in that there was in them a presence of conscious power which gave them superiority.
Ma'am, very clearly, he is also slowly talking of, he is starting with the physical age and every dimension as you see yourself. And that is how we end up existing in the entire universe, in each of these environments.
Yes, multi-dimension.
Exactly.
Their distinctive physical feature was the eye with which they appealed, commanded, and expressed to others their sentiment and thought.
Their sentiment and thought. This is your third eye.
Yeah, correct.
Hmm.
The age began when some of the air people became acquainted with the fire, which is radiant matter or starlight. They became conscious of the presence of the fire units in the layer of fire. After that, others and then more found their way into the starlight. At
Hmm.
no time did all of the air people develop into fire people. In a fire age, there were on the earth also the three other ages, and people lived on the earth, in the water, and through the air, and communicated with each other by travel and trading.
Hmm.
With all different other age group people. People of an earth age had bodies adjusted and restricted to the use of those solid units. People of an earth age had bodies adjusted and restricted to the use of those solid units that were in a gross and solidified state.
Hmm.
Yeah, we are all limited on the earth. People who were of water age had bodies which were adapted to the fluid solid units. Okay,
Hmm.
let's go
So
down.
ultimately, he will make us particles and floating in the universe, I think. The way he's taking
People,
us.
yeah, people of an air age were such because they had bodies attuned to airy solid units. And the people of a fire age were conscious of the radiant solid units and their bodies were adjusted to them. The
Hmm.
fire units on the physical plane are starlight. Starlight is imperceptible, though a condensation of it in a mass produces the bodies of the stars. In a fire age, people were conscious of and in touch with the units of starlight. They saw them and saw by them, and by means of them could use the forces of the radiant solid layer, and through them the forces of the other three layers. Starlight works through the sun. The
Hmm.
people of Earth age can use starlight only when they use it in and as sunlight, but the people in a fire age could use the starlight without being dependent on the sun.
Because they had it in their environment.
Fire age.
Correct.
So they depending on the sun.
But
Already
Earth
they
age
had that.
requires the presence of the sun to trigger the starlight in the environment.
Correct. The sun is a focus of forces, an airy center in the airy layer. Through and out of the sun,
Streams
through and
sunlight.
out of the sun streams sunlight, which is a mixture of radiant, airy, fluid, and solid units. Through and out of the sun streams of sunlight. Okay. Through that, we are getting mixture of the solid units, all these units. Starlight works through the airy matter and is the cause and the main support of the activities of sunlight. The sunlight causes units to be active as nature forces which maintain life on the earth crust and by which the present age builds up its civilization. The earth crust, which is a precipitation of the fourfold sunlight, screens off portions of the each set of units and so retains and supplies what is needed to keep up the activities on the earth crust. So it screens off portions of each unit and supplies whatever needed. The units become nature forces as they approach the screens of the earth crust.
Correct. That means they become denser.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Away from the screen, the units do not act as these forces. These forces produce light, heat, power, generation, and decomposition within a certain range only. Within a certain range only. Thus, if the focal body called the sun is not within that range of the earth crust, it does not produce these effects. Moreover, it is necessary that the earth crust should give up earth units to furnish some material to produce these effects. So it has to give, the earth crust should give
It
up the
has to
earth
transform.
units.
It has to transform.
So that solid matter need to give up. In an earth age, people cannot have light and heat unless these three conditions are fulfilled. But in their fire age, the people could get the equivalent of light, heat, and electricity without being dependent on the screening, on the range of the sun, and on the action of the solid crust in sending out units to meet the incoming sunlight. So automatically all these you get the light, heat, and electricity. The habitations of the 5 people were in the air, on the water, and on the earth, but they were conscious of and used as their medium the fire present in the air, in the water, and in the earth. So they
So
used
each one had
the
to.
fire.
Now, I think this combination is what Deepak Chopra seems to be saying. Your emotions are sitting as units across the body. And when they are brought together, they act as the emotional energy. So now extend that description to this.
So basically, they're using this firepower from the air, from the water, from the
But they are
earth.
spread across.
Yeah. But when they needed, they take that firepower. Yeah. They lived in communities of their own and had their own circles, though they went among the others. If they did this, they were immediately seen or sensed to be superior because of the influences that went with them and the powers in their eyes. They could eat any of the animal or vegetable foods or live on or live on
Live
fluids,
on fluids.
or even by breathing only. If they wanted to prolong their lives, they did not eat solid or liquid foods. Their bodies were physical, but they could do things with them that the others could not do with theirs.
That
They
means
engaged in
they were physical and solid. That means they could transform between the two states.
Astral and the physical. Yeah. They engaged in agriculture, commerce, mechanics, and the arts. They could produce things for the earth people which these could not. They did the same for the water and the air people. The air people reached so high a state because those of the fire age lived among them and assisted them. So they're closer to fire people. They have the powers. In agriculture, they could see what was going on in the plants. They could see the activities of the seeds and roots, how the plants received the nourishment, how they appropriated it and grew, and they could direct development as they wished. They blended plants and produced new fruits, vegetables, and grains. In the beginnings of the fire.
Is it because they were able to do it at the level of the thought?
Yeah. Because in the fire age people, they with the conscious and the fire, that radiant power, they could do. In the beginnings of the fire ages, these people built machines for dredging, building, lighting, and generating power. As they advanced, they used few or none for themselves, though they still built machines for the people who were in the more backward ages. They helped the earth and the water people in cutting great canals on land and through the earth and made great waterways. They used huge machines to cut underwater and to dredge. They could see all that was going on in the great depths and direct operations accordingly. At the heights of the fire age, the foremost among the fire people needed only their bodies to accomplish what they wished. Let's go down. 4 fingers were used: the index finger of fire, the middle finger for air, the third finger for water, and the little finger for earth.
No, the fist concept by Patriji is coming from here then.
Yeah, correct.
That is how
Normally
thumb becomes the ether.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, fire. Yeah, index finger, fire. Yeah, middle finger, air, third finger, water, and the earth. With these fingers of the left hand, they sensed, and with those of the right hand, they directed a stream of the units of the elements. They could tear down and dissipate or create and build up a structure of solid things by the forces guided by their right hands.
Ma'am, one interesting thing here. Vata, Pitta, Kapha, and right? The gunas,
Yeah.
the gunas,
Yeah.
the Ayurveda, the flow, all that is
Correct.
getting covered through this chapter. Oh my God. And then the mudras also.
Correct. Correct. Yeah. Because they use, see, these are the elements they use for the mudras, fingers. Yeah. Correct.
Exactly.
Correct.
Oh my.
The thumbs were used either to feel or to direct, unify or accentuate the streams. The organs in their bodies were reservoirs of force, and the nerves connected with the respective systems contacted the force. So the thumbs were used either to feel or to direct, unify or accentuate the streams. The organs in their bodies were reservoirs of force, and the nerves connected with the respective systems contacted the force. The forces in the earth they called, used and directed through their digestive systems and the sense of smell. The forces of the water, which entered into the combination with the earth, they controlled through the organs of their circulatory system and the sense of taste. The air they
Water.
ruled by control.
See, now look at this, how he is building the entire human body gradually.
But
Are you
this is
able to see?
mind blowing.
Huh?
This is mind blowing. Like I'm
No,
still trying to get
absolutely.
my
Ne?
head around it.
No,
I'm still
we will
trying to
have to
get my
read
head
it twice
around it.
or thrice and draw a proper diagram to understand this. But it is absolutely amazing the way he's building the entire human body.
So
The
the earth is used for the digestive system and sense of
Mooladhara chakra.
and the
Mooladhara
sense of
chakra.
smell.
Correct.
Yes. And then this water is used to create the
Taste.
circulatory
Water
system
is
and
the
the sense
taste.
of taste.
Taste. Water is taste.
Yeah, the forces of the water which entered into combination with the earth, they controlled through the organs of their circulatory system and the sense of taste. The air they ruled by control of the air forces which worked outside through the air, the water and the earth, and passed inside through their respiratory systems, which passed through the circulatory and digestive systems. That is the
Prana.
circulatory.
Prana.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Speech was the power that unified the four states as sunlight unifies the four kinds of light. By contacting the starlight in the sunlight, they synchronized and controlled the forces in the other elements. The starlight was present throughout the others. They used it through their generative systems and the sense of sight. The physical bodies are foremost among the five people.
Generative system is your pituitary gland, the endocrine system, as well as the pineal gland.
Correct.
My God. कहाँ से लेके जा रहे हो मेरे भाई? ये तो और 4 बार पढ़ना पड़ेगा, धीरे धीरे, लाइन बाय लाइन, फुल स्टॉप लगा के, कॉमा लगा के पढ़ना पड़ेगा.
The physical bodies
bodies.
The physical bodies of these foremost among the five people could pass through any part of the earth at any speed desired. They could pass their physical bodies through any physical object, no matter what its density. They could appear in several places at the same time, no matter how distant the places. They did this by seeing where they wished to be and by using radiant solid matter. They were present in and penetrated all intervening grosser matter. These five people could see and hear anywhere through solid matter. See, that is what astral bodies, like
Exactly.
without, yeah. The five units are everywhere at the same time. These people connected the five units in their bodies with the five units in the earthly layer. There, these fire units affected the air units, and these the water units, and these produced the phenomena through the earth units. So that combination, it happened. The fire people had use of the fourth dimension presence because of their being conscious of and familiar with the radiant solid units, the fourth dimension. This meant that they could pass through to be in work with the fire, air, water, or earth units. When their physical body was put in phase with radiant solid units, which was done by focusing the sense of sight on some of them, it appeared simultaneously at the places where these foremost people wanted to be seen. Just by focusing where they want to be, yeah. No obstructions intervene between those who can use the radiant solid units and the places where they wish to be seen. They remained visible in these different places as long as they continued to think, to feel, and to see themselves there.
Means they were basically, as long as they stayed connected, they were visible. They were able to see. Concentration. Okay.
Correct. Their bodies were in any one place only, but they removed the intervening units of matter and so became visible at the same time at every place where they wished to be seen. They removed the intervening units, so they can be at same place and several places at the same time. Because of their power of sight, which no matter could obstruct, they saw at the same time all the places at which and the people by whom they were seen. They could disappear when they wished. They did this by cutting off from their bodies the contact with the class of the fire units whose contacts make visibility. Amazing.
Is
They
this
could
also
examine
not, man? Is this also not the ability for us to visualize
in several
an
places same
object that
time?
we exteriorize later?
And not only that, even Patriji, some people say Patriji also, he appeared at the same time,
No,
in different
that
places.
is because of their ability to control these elements.
Correct.
Okay, but for the normal, is it not your ability to concentrate and visualize something? For one who wants to manifest something, it is the same concept, right?
Correct. That's what he said by removing the intervening units. That means negative things. See, removing the negative thinking, that those thoughts, you can manifest. Probably that is true.
Astral surgery also is coming into picture slowly.
They could examine any cell or organ in the human body and tell the use to which it had been put and describe means appropriate to effect a change. They could see at once the cause and cure of a disorder. So they had all those powers just by looking at them. I think even now
No,
some
the other
people,
way to understand this is we have all those units within us.
yeah.
And how do we
Yes.
connect with them? We connect with them as we increase our consciousness and awareness of those units, which are distributed across this body.
Correct. Focusing more on radiant airy matter, airy units.
No, you should first visualize yourself as those objects,
Not the solid.
not the solid.
Correct.
Yeah, they are communicating.
Communicating among themselves by thought and speech. Distance was no obstruction to their hearing each other or any sounds in nature. They could get some records of
But
past
this is
events
very interesting, right? The first line.
by thought and speech.
Mantra, right?
They communicate, correct?
Mantra and Tantra.
Yeah, because rishis they were getting, Vishwamitra gave that. Yeah. Distance was no obstruction to their hearing each other or any sounds in nature. They could get some records of past event by looking at them or hearing them from the radiant or the airy states of matter, and so get as far as from plane of the physical world. So they can get the past records, past and the
Akashic. This is connecting to the Akashic record.
yes. There were laws that prevented the use of these forces beyond certain limits. The people of Fire Age could not interfere with the law of thought without too great injury to themselves. Their powers reached everything in the four zones of the solid state of the physical plane on the nature side, but there were many things in themselves as doers which they had not mastered and did not master as people, though some of the individuals did. This lack of mastery brought about their decline and the disappearance of the Fire Age. So, because they could not master, the decline had started. The high point of a fire age marked also the highest point in the air, the water, and the earth ages. As the fire age disappeared, each of the others deteriorated and vanished by degrees. Oh, as the fire age disappeared, others also deteriorated. The
Because
last
lack
one
of
to
light, you are increasing the ignorance now.
yeah,
See, as
the
you
last one
increase the ignorance, what is
correct.
happening? Darkness is increasing. That means Satya
Become
Yuga is shifting towards Kali
into
Yuga
so
slowly.
yoga stage.
So
The
even that
last
is
crumble.
combined into this lesser word. He has even combined the yugas into it.
Yes, the last crumble was the earth age.
Yeah,
It was
these,
ended.
sorry,
Yeah,
sorry. These were all the powers that were there in the in the when Ram and
yeah,
Satyuga,
no,
right? In
the
the
Satya
Devta Yuga.
Yuga,
Yeah.
he slowly, as they deteriorated, you are moving down the supply chain.
Yes.
Because
कहाँ
in
कहाँ से
Rama's
क्या लेके आ गया ये? I think this is an amazing journey. Next week also we repeat this chapter, man, with some more clarity. 100%. We
Yeah,
can't
yeah,
go
good
without
idea.
yeah. No,
the
then he is bringing us to the civilization and the governments. So we need to understand this better.
the last crumble was the earth age. It was ended by cataclysms. A bleak earth succeeded.
What is
Um,
cataclysm means?
Or
Cataclysm?
I think he is meaning the Samundar Manthan and all that.
Acha, acha, okay.
I think
Cataclysms are all the what you call the explosions and implosions and all that. Let us see what it is.
uh, violent natural event. Violent natural event.
That's what. A disaster or a sudden violent event that causes great change.
Yeah.
Flood or war. ये पाकिस्तान में हो रहा है ना?
And then also
Yeah. Amazing,
earthquakes.
ma'am. What a chapter you chose today.
Okay. It was ended. A bleak earth succeeded. On that lived barbarians who were the degenerate remnants of the four ages, of which they had not even a memory, or who were newly outcast from the inner earth. Only here and there remained traditions of some people of the four ages in distorted legends of supernatural beings with divine powers. So most of them, their memory is gone. Only few had
Correct.
supernatural.
This section 6 is to be reread. Amazing, no?
Amazing.
I think
This
we
is
need
how
to. We need to.
uh,
But gives us hope, na? Gives us hope कि हम ये थे तो हम वापस बन सकते हैं. That is so great.
No, that is true. That is what our entire spiritual journey is telling us, no?
Yep, yep.
This tells us
Amazing. ये तो फिर से पढ़ना पड़ेगा.
if we don't